Welcome to a new long horror story written by Oracle 1. The time loops of the deserted village. The road was long, winding, and strangely empty. Elias had been driving for hours, the headlights cutting through the mist like twin blades of dull white light. The GPS had lost signal miles ago, and even the radio, usually his steady companion, had fallen silent, replaced by soft static that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. The forest on either side of the road pressed close, its black trees leaning inward as if listening. Occasionally, an owl called in the distance, the sound echoing like a memory. He was supposed to be in Hever's Crossing by now, a small, forgotten village nestled in the valley. His editor had sent him there to write a human interest piece, Vanishing Villages of the North. A dull assignment, but Elias had jumped at it. Anything to get away from the city. Anything to escape the constant noise that filled his head since the accident. His wife's face lingered there, in the space between thought and silence. He turned up the heater, trying to push the memory down. But the fog only grew thicker. After another hour, the trees suddenly broke apart, revealing a sign at the side of the road, half-rotted, barely standing. Hever's Crossing, 2 miles. The letters were faded, the wood warped and split. Moss crept up its base like decay made visible. Elias exhaled in relief and pressed on. The road narrowed, twisting between open fields and skeletal fences. When he finally saw the village, his first thought was that it looked like a photograph someone had taken 100 years ago, and then forgotten. The main street was lined with empty buildings. Windows black and gaping, the roofs sagged, shingles scattered across the ground. Not a single light burned anywhere. His car slowed to a crawl. He could almost feel the air change, colder, heavier, as if the place itself resented being disturbed. He parked by what might have once been a general store. A faded sign hung above the door, the letters almost illegible beneath years of grime. When he opened the car door, the silence hit him like a wall. No birds, no wind, just the faint ticking of his watch. He grabbed his camera and notebook, stepping into the road. His boots crunched on gravel that hadn't been walked on in years. A single leaf skittered past him, though the air was completely still. He tried calling out, "Hello? Anyone here?" His voice seemed to vanish as soon as it left his lips. The echo came back a moment later, but it was wrong. It wasn't an echo at all. It was a reply. "Here." Elias froze, his breath catching in his throat. The word had been soft, drawn out, as though whispered by the wind itself. He turned slowly. Nothing but the street, stretching away into fog. He shook his head, trying to dismiss it. Old buildings. Weird acoustics. That's all. He took a photo of the sign, the empty road, and the boarded-up store. Each flash of the camera felt intrusive, too loud, too bright. The village didn't like being seen. Further down the street, he found a clock tower. It rose above the other buildings, narrow and skeletal, its black frame visible through the haze. The clock face had stopped. The hands pointed to 2:47. He made a note of it automatically. Clock stopped. Structural decay moderate. Photograph condition. He raised his camera. Click. Then again. Click. But on the third shot, when the flash lit up the tower, he saw something that made his stomach twist. For just a fraction of a second, the hands of the clock moved. A tiny jerk. Backward. He lowered the camera and stared up at it. Still. Silent. The second hand was now pointing just slightly before 2:47. Wind, he muttered. Mechanical shift. Old metal contracts. But the air was still completely calm. He spent the next hour wandering through the village, documenting everything he saw. The church with its doors wide open, the well in the center of the square, the houses lined neatly in rows, their curtains hanging limp. Everything looked untouched, yet nothing looked alive. He found an inn, the Hever's Rest. The sign hung by one chain, swaying gently. The windows were intact, and when he tried the door, it opened with a long, aching creak. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old wood. Tables sat neatly arranged, a fireplace stood empty, and a single candle rested on the counter, melted almost flat. He set his bag down and exhaled. "All right," he said aloud, more to break the silence than anything. "Let's get a few notes down." He wrote for a while. Descriptions. The eerie stillness. The clock tower. When he checked his watch, it read 2:47. He frowned. That couldn't be right. It had been over an hour since he saw the clock tower. He shook his wrist, thinking maybe the watch had stopped. The second hand ticked forward once, then froze. Then ticked backward. Just 1 second. Then forward again. He felt the hairs rise on his arms. He stood, glancing toward the window. The fog outside had thickened again, pressing against the glass. Something moved out there. A shadow. Someone walking past. Elias hurried to the door and threw it open, but the street was empty. Then he heard the faintest sound behind him. Footsteps. He spun around. The inn's front room was empty. Only now, there was a single wet footprint on the floor. Right beside his own. He backed away slowly, heart hammering. The fog outside seemed to pulse faintly with light, almost like breathing. And then, he noticed something else. The clock on the wall above the bar. Its hands pointed to 2:47. He looked at his watch again. Still 2:47. His pulse raced. He could feel it. He could feel time not moving. He grabbed his camera and snapped a photo of the clock, desperate for proof. The flash went off, blinding him for a moment. When his vision cleared, the room was the same, except for one detail. Now there were 2 wet footprints beside his. Elias stumbled backward toward the door. He burst outside, gasping for air. The mist swirled, curling around his legs like water. He ran. Down the main street, past the general store, past the church. His breaths came ragged, every sound echoing unnaturally loud. When he reached the clock tower, he stopped dead. The hands were moving again. Backward. Slowly, deliberately. 2:46. 2:45. 2:44. He stared in disbelief. No. He turned and ran back the way he'd come, but the street seemed longer now. The inn wasn't there anymore. Neither was his car. Every building looked slightly different, tilted, older, the wood more rotted. He turned a corner and froze. Ahead of him stood a figure. A man. Tall, wearing a coat just like his. Holding a camera. Elias raised his hand slowly. The man did the same. He took a hesitant step forward, and the figure did too. It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't a trick of light. It was him, standing 20 feet away, his own face, his own eyes. And then, the other Elias spoke. "You're late." Elias stumbled backward, shaking his head. No, that's not. But the other him stepped closer. "It's already started again. You shouldn't have come back." "What are you talking about? Who are you?" "You know who I am." Elias's breath came fast and shallow. "You're not real." The other one tilted his head slightly. "You said that last time too." Elias blinked. "Last time?" The air shimmered around them. The fog twisted, swirling faster. The distant clock tower struck once. The sound echoed like a gunshot. 2:47, and the world snapped. Elias gasped, blinking hard. He was back in his car. Headlights cutting through fog. The forest on either side, leaning close. The GPS dead. He stared at his hands gripping the steering wheel, his knuckles white. The road ahead curved gently. He blinked again. The sign appeared. Hever's Crossing, 2 miles. His heart stopped. "No," he whispered. "No. He checked his watch. 2:47. Elias's hands trembled on the steering wheel. The world outside the windshield was the same, every branch, every curve of the road. He could feel it before he even reached the village again. The same heaviness in the air. The same creeping sense of déjà vu that clung to the inside of his skull like damp cobwebs. He whispered, "This isn't real." But the tires rolled forward anyway. The trees parted. The village appeared. Exactly as before. Same sagging roofs. Same clock tower in the mist. Same silence pressing down like a physical weight. He slowed the car to a stop and let the engine idle. The tick-tick-tick of the cooling metal filled the emptiness. He didn't want to step out. Every nerve screamed at him to turn around and drive the other way. But he couldn't, not really. Something deep in his chest told him he had to go back. That this had already happened. Or was still happening. He turned off the engine. The key clicked once. And in that instant, he felt the world stutter. Like the film of reality had skipped a frame. He pushed the door open. The air was colder than before, sharper, almost metallic, biting the back of his throat. The village was exactly where he'd left it, though it somehow felt older. The buildings leaned a little more. The mist was thicker. The paint peeled in longer strips. He stood in the middle of the street, gripping his camera like a weapon. His mind scrambled for logic. He thought of gas leaks, of hallucinations, of carbon monoxide poisoning. But the raw clarity of everything around him, the crisp texture of the cracked wood beneath his fingers, the way his breath came out in pale clouds, made that impossible. He wasn't dreaming. He was repeating. Somewhere, a clock ticked faintly. 2:47. He tried to retrace his steps. The inn was there again, its door half open, as before. Inside, the air smelled of dust and rot. He walked to the counter, the floorboards groaning beneath his boots. The candle still sat there, melted flat, and behind the counter, he saw something new. A small, leather-bound journal. He reached for it slowly. The cover was cracked, the pages yellowed. When he flipped it open, he froze. The first line was written in his own handwriting. "If you're reading this, it's already too late. The loop resets at 2:47. His heart slammed against his ribs. He skimmed the page. "There's no way out. I've tried everything, running, hiding, even destroying the clock tower. Every time it resets. The village traps you in its last minute. The time of its death." He turned the page. The writing grew shakier, desperate. They say the villagers worshipped something beneath the well. Something that offered eternity. They didn't understand what it meant. The price wasn't life, it was repetition. Elias's pulse quickened. "I think I've been here for weeks. Or maybe years. Each time I remember more. Each time it hurts more. If you find this, don't stay. Don't listen to them. Don't look at your own reflection. It's not you anymore." He stared at the last line, written in deep, jagged strokes. "Don't let 2:47 come again." The clock above the bar chimed once. Elias looked up. 2:46. He ran outside. The fog churned around him, alive with movement. He sprinted toward the clock tower, boots striking wet stone. His breath came ragged, each exhale forming clouds in the cold air. As he neared the square, he heard voices, soft, overlapping whispers that came from nowhere and everywhere. "Time is mercy, time is death, you will join us." He reached the base of the tower and tried the door. Locked. He slammed his shoulder against it once, twice, then it gave way. The old hinges screamed. Inside, the air was freezing. The interior was narrow, lined with rotting stairs spiraling upward. The sound of the clock mechanism echoed faintly from above. Tick, tick, tick. He climbed. Each step creaked under his weight. Dust fell from the ceiling in small showers. The higher he went, the colder it became, until he could see his breath fogging the air. At the top, he reached the clockroom. Gears filled the space, massive wheels of brass, corroded and half-stuck, turning with unnatural rhythm. The walls were covered in scratches, numbers etched over and over again. 247, 247, 247. And standing by the gears was a man. Elias froze. The man was facing away, shoulders hunched, hands stained black with grease. He wore a coat like Elias's. His hair the same dark brown. "Hey!" Elias shouted. "Who are you?" The man turned slowly. His own face looked back at him. Older this time. Eyes hollow, skin pale, the faint shimmer of madness behind his stare. "You shouldn't have come up here," the other Elias said. "It resets faster when you fight it." "What are you talking about?" "The village feeds on moments. It keeps us here. It's been years for me, days for others. I tried to stop the clock once. It doesn't like that." Elias's voice shook. "Who are you?" The older version smiled faintly. "You. Or what's left of you." The gears shuddered, metal grinding against metal. "Tick, tick. Please," Elias said, "tell me how to get out." "There's only one way." The older him stepped closer, reaching into his coat pocket. He pulled out something small and black. A revolver. "You have to break the loop at its center." Elias stared, his throat dry. "You mean?" The older him nodded. "End it before it resets. Before the next you wakes up on the road." The clock hands above them began to move backward again. 246, 245. Elias took a step back. "No." But the older one grabbed his wrist, shoving the gun into his palm. "It's mercy. Trust me." Then the tower began to scream. The gears shrieked, twisting impossibly fast. The air vibrated with the sound of metal tearing apart. The light from the cracks in the wall grew brighter, blinding white. The older Elias turned toward the clock face and shouted over the noise, "If you can't stop the time, destroy the heart." Before Elias could ask what that meant, the world split open. He was standing in the street again. Fog. Silence. His car parked exactly where it had been before. His camera around his neck. He looked down. The revolver was still in his hand. His watch ticked once, then froze. 247. He screamed, hurling the gun into the dirt, but it vanished before it hit the ground, swallowed by the fog. He fell to his knees, gripping his head, trembling uncontrollably. The silence pressed in again. The air was heavy with static. And then, the clock tower chimed. Bong! The sound rolled through the streets like thunder. Bong! Each echo seemed to tear something open inside him, pulling at the edges of his memory. He remembered flashes, other times, other loops. Himself running, himself hiding, himself dying. He saw the same minute replayed endlessly, like film reels stacked atop each other. He saw the villagers, faces blank and blurred, whispering to the well. He saw his own hand turning the clock backward, desperate to reset it again. And then he saw something else. A black shape beneath the village. Moving, breathing, waiting. The ground trembled. From the center of the square, the old well began to glow faintly, soft, pulsing light, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The mist around it swirled in perfect circles. Elias stumbled to his feet and staggered toward it, drawn by something he couldn't name. As he approached, he saw carvings along the stones, strange, spiraling symbols, almost like clock faces overlapping, each one marked 247. He peered over the edge. The darkness below seemed endless, but at the very bottom, something shifted. Something looked up at him. He stumbled backward, choking on a cry. The fog surged upward from the well, wrapping around him, cold and wet like hands. Voices whispered again. He remembers, it begins again. The time must feed. The light intensified, flooding the village in white. And then, darkness. Elias opened his eyes. He was sitting in his car. The forest pressed close on both sides. The GPS was dead. The radio whispered static. He looked at his hands. They were clean again. No blood. No dirt. He whispered, "No." Then the sign appeared through the fog. Hever's Crossing, 2 miles. He checked his watch. 2:47. And then something inside the car spoke. A voice, low and broken, coming from the passenger seat. You have to end it before it ends you. Elias turned slowly. Sitting beside him was himself, older, eyes hollow, blood drying on his cheek. And before Elias could scream, the world blinked. Elias's heart stuttered. His breath froze in his chest. The older version of himself sat beside him in the passenger seat, hands folded neatly in his lap, eyes empty as glass. He looked dead. No rise and fall of breath, no flicker of life, yet his lips moved. You never learn, the older Elias whispered. Elias jerked the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. His body felt like it was moving underwater, every motion thick and delayed. What are you? He managed to choke out. The older one smiled faintly. You. Just later. Just tired. The headlights flickered once, twice, then died. The darkness pressed in close. Outside, the fog pulsed faintly, like something breathing. The air smelled like wet stone and rot. Elias's trembling hand reached for the ignition, but before he could turn it, the older version grabbed his wrist. His grip was cold, unnaturally cold, like something that had been buried. It doesn't matter what you do. Drive forward, turn back, burn the village, it always leads here. Always this road. Always this minute. Elias tore free and shouted, Why me? The older him stared at him, blankly. Because you came. Someone always comes. It has to start with someone who still believes in time. Then, the man smiled, blood seeping slowly from the corner of his mouth. But you won't, soon. You'll forget what time is. You'll just wait. Elias blinked, just once, and the passenger seat was empty. Only the faint impression of someone having sat there remained in the leather. He stared at it, shaking. Then, slowly, he started the engine. It turned over instantly, as if nothing had happened. The headlights flared back to life. He pressed down on the gas pedal. The car rolled forward. 2 miles to Hever's Crossing. 2 miles to the village that never let him go. As the road wound downward, the forest grew denser, shadows blending into one another until the world looked like it had been dipped in ink. His thoughts blurred. He tried to count the seconds aloud. 1, 2, 3. But somewhere around 4, the numbers began to loop. He heard himself say 3 again. Then 2. Then 3. His throat felt tight. He slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop. The dashboard clock blinked. 2:47. He stared at it, trembling. Then he noticed something in the rearview mirror. A face. His face. Staring from the back seat. The reflection smiled. And then it whispered, You're almost ready. Elias lunged out of the car, stumbling into the road. The air hit him like ice. He fell to his knees, coughing, gasping for air that didn't taste real. The fog coiled tighter around him. Every direction looked the same. He was alone. Completely, utterly alone. Except for the ticking. He turned his head. Somewhere in the mist, a faint metallic tick-tick-tick echoed steadily. Like a heartbeat. He followed it. The road faded into cobblestone. The trees twisted upward like black veins. And then he was standing at the edge of Hever's Crossing again. He could see the clock tower's shadow looming through the mist. The village was still. But this time, it was wrong. The buildings weren't just abandoned, they were rotting, half sunken into the ground, tilting like they were melting. The windows were filled with shadows that moved even when nothing else did. The clock tower leaned slightly to the left, its gears still groaning faintly, the hands fixed at 2:47. Elias took a slow step forward. His boots splashed into puddles that glowed faintly under the fog. The liquid shimmered silver, like mercury. The air was heavy with whispers. The gift of forever, the punishment of knowing, we are all you. His eyes darted toward the inn. Through the shattered doorway, he could see the candle still burning, the journal still lying open on the counter. He walked inside. The journal's pages were damp, the ink smeared, but there were new lines now, scrawled in different handwriting. It's not the tower. It's the well. The well is the heart. The time runs from it, not the clock. End the reflection, break the circle. Elias stared at the words, realization dawning slowly, horribly. The well. That's what the other him had meant by the heart. He turned, running out the door toward the square. The well waited for him like a mouth in the ground, breathing softly. The fog around it pulsed with the rhythm of a heartbeat. He could hear faint echoes rising from it, voices overlapping, whispering in tones both familiar and alien. He stepped closer and peered into the dark. And there, reflected on the surface of the water, was himself. Not a reflection that mimicked him, though. It was delayed. When he leaned in, it didn't move right away. When he blinked, it watched him for a moment longer. And when he whispered, "What are you?" it smiled. Then it spoke. "You made us." Elias stumbled backward, heart pounding. The reflection climbed upward. The water's surface rippled, and his hands, emerged first, then his head, his chest. It wasn't like something crawling out, it was like reality letting it through. The reflection stood before him, identical down to the smallest detail. Except for its eyes. They were clocks. Tiny, silver clock faces, ticking in perfect sync. Elias's breath hitched. The double tilted its head. You wanted to record the truth of this place. You wanted to see what time had forgotten. Now you're part of it. Elias backed away, shaking. You're not real. The double smiled wider. Neither are you. Not anymore. Then the other Elias lunged. Elias fell backward, scrambling across the stone. The ground beneath him rippled like liquid, the fog burning cold against his skin. The double's hand caught his ankle, cold as death. He kicked, hard, and broke free, stumbling to his feet. The revolver, the one from the tower, lay on the ground a few feet away. He didn't question it. He grabbed it. The double stopped, tilting its head. You think you can kill time? Elias raised the gun. His hand shook violently. The clock tower's chime began again. Bong. The echo rippled through the air. Bong. The reflection's voice grew distorted, deeper, layered with dozens of others. You will wake on the road again. You will forget again. You will be me again. Elias shouted and pulled the trigger. The sound shattered the fog. The double jerked backward, then smiled. No blood. No wound. Just cracks spreading across its face like glass. It stepped forward, whispering, "Now you see." And then it shattered completely, into fragments of light that rained down, dissolving into the mist. The world began to collapse. The air bent, folding inward. The buildings twisted and melted into spirals. The ground beneath him pulsed, opening into darkness. Elias ran toward the forest, but every step carried him nowhere. The road kept repeating, the trees circling back into themselves. Then, a sound. A clock ticking. Faster. And faster. Until it wasn't ticking anymore, it was screaming. Elias clutched his head. The noise tore through his mind, every thought unspooling into static. He screamed back, but there was no air, no sound, only time itself unraveling around him. Then, silence. He opened his eyes. Soft daylight spilled through the windshield. Birds sang faintly in the distance. The forest was quiet. He sat behind the wheel of his car, parked on a dirt road. His watch read 2:46. He laughed once, weakly. Maybe it was over. He started the engine. It hummed to life. The GPS flickered. Destination. Hever's Crossing, 2 miles. His smile faltered. No, he whispered. He reached for the radio. The static was gone. A voice came through, soft, calm, almost gentle. You're listening to 247 FM. Where time stands still. Elias's eyes went wide. He looked at the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty. but the reflection smiled. And then, the clock tower's bell tolled, faint but clear, echoing across time itself. Bong. 2:47. The loop began again. For more stories, like and subscribe to the channel.